H1. The Ancient Mothman of Hawaii. H2. Part 1. The Eyes Above the Volcano. So, the rain fell in sheets across the dark slopes of Hawaii Island. The jungle seemed alive. Not with birds, not with insects, but with something older. Something that watched, something that remembered, and something that had been waiting. For Gwen. H.R. Gwen Kahele had spent most of her life studying Hawaiian legends. At 32 years old, she worked as a folklore researcher, traveling across remote villages to collect stories before they disappeared forever. Most legends had reasonable explanations. Ghosts became tricks of memory. Monsters became animals. Ancient curses became coincidences. At least, that was what Gwen believed, until the phone call. It came from an elderly man living near the isolated forests surrounding the slopes of Mauna Loa. His voice sounded weak, terrified. "I've seen it again." Gwen frowned. "Seen what?" A long silence followed. Then the old man whispered, "The Mothman." The call ended. H.R. 3 days later, Gwen arrived at the village. The settlement consisted of only a handful of houses, surrounded by dense jungle and black volcanic rock. The locals weren't friendly. Many refused to speak. Others stared nervously whenever Gwen mentioned the creature. One old woman crossed herself. Another walked away without saying a word. It was as if merely speaking about the thing invited danger. That night, Gwen met the man who had called her. His name was Kaleo. He looked nearly 90 years old. His skin was weathered like ancient leather. His hands trembled as he poured tea. "You shouldn't have come," he said. Gwen smiled. "I hear that a lot." Kaleo didn't smile back. "This isn't a story." Outside, thunder rolled across the island. Rain hammered the roof. The old man stared into the darkness beyond the window, as if expecting something to be standing there, watching, waiting. Then he began. "It first appeared nearly 200 years ago." Gwen raised an eyebrow. 200? Kaleo nodded. "The first sightings happened before outsiders arrived. The old Hawaiians called it Ka Pepe Nui, the Great Moth, the Winged Watcher, the Death Messenger." A cold chill crept through the room. The creature always appeared before disaster. Volcanic eruptions, mass deaths, storms, disappearances. It was never seen during peaceful times. Gwen scribbled notes. "A warning spirit?" Kaleo slowly shook his head. "No." His eyes widened. It wasn't warning people. It was hunting. The fire suddenly crackled. A loud pop echoed from the hearth. Both of them jumped. Kaleo's face became pale. "Sometimes," he whispered, "it mimics sounds." Gwen laughed nervously. "You mean like a bird?" "No." The old man's voice dropped to a whisper. "It mimics people." The room became very quiet. The rain seemed farther away, muted, distant, almost as if the house itself were listening. Then Kaleo leaned closer. "What if you heard your mother's voice calling from the jungle? What if you followed it? What if she had been dead for years?" Gwen felt goosebumps rise on her arms. The old man stood and walked toward a dusty shelf. He removed a faded photograph. The image showed several men standing beside a fishing boat. One man had been circled in red ink. "My brother." Gwen examined the picture. "What happened to him?" Kaleo swallowed hard. He followed a voice. 23 years earlier, a terrible storm had struck the island. Kaleo and his brother had been repairing fishing nets. Around midnight, someone called from outside. It sounded exactly like their mother, but their mother had died 5 years earlier. Kaleo ignored it. His brother didn't. He walked into the jungle and never returned. Search teams spent weeks looking. Nothing was found. No body, no clothing, nothing. Until 3 months later, a hiker discovered a tree deep within the forest. On the trunk were hundreds of deep claw marks. Was Kaleo's brother's wedding ring. The room felt colder, much colder. Gwen shifted uncomfortably. You believe the Mothman took him? I know it did. Lightning flashed. For a split second the entire room turned white, and Gwen thought she saw something. A shape, standing outside, beside the window. Tall, impossible, watching. Then darkness returned. The shape vanished. What does it look like? Gwen asked. Kaleo froze. His hands shook violently. You don't want to know. I do. No. His voice cracked. You really don't. Finally he spoke. It stands over 8 feet tall. It has wings larger than a truck. Its body looks almost human. But its face, the old man's breathing quickened. Its face isn't human. The eyes are red. Not glowing, not shining. Red, like fresh blood trapped beneath glass. Kaleo stopped. His eyes filled with tears. I wish I had never seen its mouth. Gwen suddenly noticed something strange. The old man's hands were bleeding. Tiny drops fell onto the table. He had dug his fingernails into his own skin, without realizing it. How many times have you seen it? Gwen asked quietly. The old man answered immediately. 3. Then he added, and every time someone died. Silence followed. Neither of them spoke. The storm outside intensified. Thunder shook the walls. Rain battered the windows. Then, tap. A single tap struck the glass. Both froze. Tap, tap, tap. Something was outside. Gwen stood. Kaleo grabbed her arm. His grip felt surprisingly strong. Don't. Tap, tap, tap. The sound moved along the side of the house, slowly, as if something huge was dragging its fingers across the wall. Scrape. Wood splintered. Gwen's heart nearly stopped. The noise traveled from one end of the house to the other. Then, silence. Complete silence. Neither moved. Neither breathed. 5 minutes passed. 10. Nothing happened. Finally, Gwen gathered enough courage to peek through the curtain. The yard was empty. Only rain, trees, darkness. For less than a second, and Gwen saw it. Far beyond the tree line, standing between 2 massive palms, a towering silhouette, humanoid, winged, motionless, watching. 2 enormous red eyes opened. Gwen stumbled backward. The curtain fell from her hands. Her entire body trembled. Kaleo didn't ask what she saw, because he already knew. The old man slowly lowered his head, like a man hearing his own death sentence. It's back. Outside the house, deep within the storm, something enormous unfolded its wings. And for the first time in decades, the ancient Mothman of Hawaii had returned. Part 2. The Voices in the Rain. The red eyes vanished. The jungle became dark once more. But Gwen knew what she had seen. It had been real. Far too real. The shape standing among the trees had not been a trick of lightning. It had been watching the house. Watching them. Waiting. Neither Gwen nor Kaleo slept that night. They sat beside the fire until dawn. Every sound outside made them jump. Every creak of the walls felt wrong. The storm eventually passed, but the fear remained, like poison spreading through the room. When morning arrived, Gwen stepped outside. The air smelled of wet earth and volcanic ash. Sunlight broke through the clouds, and for a moment everything looked normal. Then she saw the footprints. The ground around the house had become soft mud during the storm. Deep impressions surrounded the property. Not human, not animal, something else. Each print measured nearly 3 feet long, and strangely, only 2 toes were visible. Long, sharp, almost bird-like. Gwen followed the trail. The footprints circled the house 3 times. 3 complete circles, as if something had spent hours walking around them, studying them. Then the tracks disappeared. Not faded, not washed away, simply gone, as though the creature had risen into the sky. Kaleo refused to leave his home, but Gwen needed answers, so she headed toward the oldest part of the village. There she found a small wooden church built more than a century ago. The priest was an elderly Hawaiian man named Father Nakoa. His face darkened when Gwen mentioned the Mothman. "You saw it. It wasn't a question." Gwen nodded. The priest sighed heavily. "I prayed you wouldn't." He led her into a storage room behind the church. Dust covered everything. Ancient books lined the shelves. Most had not been touched for years. From a locked cabinet, he removed a weathered journal. The leather cover looked ancient. The pages were yellow and brittle. "This belonged to my grandfather." He opened the journal. Inside were dozens of handwritten accounts, each one describing the same creature, across nearly 200 years. A fisherman vanished in 1842. A family disappeared in 1879. 3 hunters were found dead in 1911. A group of tourists vanished in 1973. The stories continued, generation after generation. And every witness described the same thing: the red eyes, the wings. "The voices." "The voices?" Gwen asked. Father Nakoa nodded. "The creature can imitate anyone." Gwen remembered Kaleo's story. The priest continued. "It knows things it shouldn't know. It speaks with perfect accuracy. It sounds exactly like the person." "How?" "No one knows." The priest turned several pages, then stopped. His hands trembled. "This is the worst account." The journal entry was dated 1911. A hunter named Kimo described hearing his daughter crying in the forest. She begged for help, screamed his name, cried for hours. But his daughter was safely at home, more than 10 miles away. The voice wasn't real, yet Kimo followed it anyway. 3 days later, search teams found him, or what remained of him. The entry ended abruptly, as if even the writer couldn't finish describing the scene. Gwen closed the journal. A terrible feeling settled inside her stomach. This wasn't just a monster. It was intelligent, patient, cruel, something ancient, something that enjoyed fear. As Gwen prepared to leave, Father Nakoa grabbed her wrist. "There's something else." His voice had become barely a whisper. "The creature is getting closer." "What do you mean?" "For decades, sightings happened deep in the jungle." He swallowed hard. "Now people are seeing it near homes. Its spine. It's hunting more aggressively." The church bells suddenly rang. Bong, bong, bong. The sound echoed through the village. Father Nakoa looked toward the window, confused. No one rings them anymore. The priest rushed outside. Gwen followed. The village square was empty. No one stood near the bell tower. Yet the bells continued ringing. Bong, bong, bong. Louder, harder, faster. Then they stopped. Dead silence. Every villager had emerged from their homes. Their faces were pale, terrified. One elderly woman began crying. "It knows." Nobody asked what she meant, because everyone already understood. Something had entered the village. That evening Gwen returned to Kaleo's house. The old man seemed worse, exhausted, shaken. He listened silently as she described the journal. His voice cracked. "Someone always disappears." Suddenly, a voice came from outside. "Gwen." Her blood froze. The voice belonged to her father. Her father who had died 6 years ago. Gwen, soft, gentle, exactly the same. Every detail was perfect. The tone, the accent, the breathing, even the slight rasp he had near the end of his life. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Gwen, the voice came again, this time from the jungle, just beyond the trees. Her body instinctively moved toward the door. Kaleo leapt from his chair. No! The old man slammed the door shut. The voice continued, Gwen, help me. Tears filled her eyes. For one horrible moment she wanted to believe it. Wanted to open the door. Wanted to run into the darkness. But she knew the truth. Her father was dead. The thing outside was lying. The voice suddenly changed. It became deeper, distorted, wrong, almost amused. Then came a sound neither of them would ever forget. A laugh. A horrible, inhuman laugh. Not human, not animal. Something else, something ancient, something hungry. The laugh echoed through the trees, across the village, across the mountains. Then silence. Hours passed. Darkness deepened. Near midnight, a scream shattered the night. A woman screamed, then another, then dozens. The entire village erupted into panic. Lights appeared everywhere. People ran into the streets. Gwen and Kaleo rushed outside. A crowd had gathered near the northern edge of the village. Someone was missing. A teenage boy named Makoa. 1 minute he had been inside his house. The next he was gone. His bedroom window had been torn completely from the wall, and carved into the wooden floor beneath it were 3 enormous claw marks, fresh, still dripping with sap. Above them, written in the dust with something sharp, were 2 words, I see you. And high above the village, hidden among dark storm clouds, 2 enormous red eyes slowly opened. Part 3. The Cave Beneath the Volcano. The red eyes stared down from the clouds. Motionless. Unblinking. Impossible. The villagers screamed and ran for cover. Doors slammed shut. Windows were boarded. Lights disappeared one by one. Within minutes, the village looked abandoned, as if everyone had suddenly vanished. But Gwen couldn't look away. Those eyes seemed alive, not merely watching, studying, judging. Then lightning flashed. For a split second the sky turned white, and the eyes were gone. The clouds were empty. No one slept that night. The disappearance of young Makoa spread terror throughout the village. Search parties formed at dawn. Dozens of people entered the jungle. Gwen joined them. Hours passed. The searchers found nothing. No footprints, no blood, no clothing, no signs of struggle. Then one of the hunters shouted. Everyone rushed toward him. Near a steep cliff hidden by thick vegetation stood a strange stone formation. Black volcanic rock rose from the ground like giant teeth. And in the center was a narrow opening. A cave. Several villagers immediately backed away. Some began whispering prayers. Others refused to go closer. Gwen noticed fear in their eyes. Real fear. The kind that comes from old stories told around fires for generations. What is this place? She asked. One hunter answered quietly. The forbidden cave. Another hunter crossed himself. No one goes inside. Why? The man hesitated. Because things don't come back out. A heavy silence followed. Then an elderly villager stepped forward. His face looked pale. My grandfather told me about this cave. Everyone listened. He said ancient Hawaiians sealed something inside long before outsiders arrived. What? The old man slowly shook his head. He never said. The man's voice dropped to a whisper. If the red-eyed watcher returns, never enter the cave. The jungle suddenly felt colder, much colder. Gwen stared into the darkness inside the cave. Something about it felt wrong. Not dangerous, hungry, as though the darkness itself was alive, waiting, watching. A terrible smell drifted outward. Rotting meat, wet earth, and something else. Something old, very old. Then Gwen saw it. Scratched into the stone beside the entrance. Ancient symbols, Hawaiian petroglyphs. She moved closer, carefully tracing the carvings. The symbols showed people kneeling before a giant winged figure. A figure with enormous eyes. Then another carving, bodies hanging from trees. Another, entire villages burning. And finally, a mountain erupting while the winged creature stood above it. Gwen's stomach tightened. This wasn't a simple legend. The carvings were centuries old, perhaps older. Someone had encountered the creature long ago, and wanted future generations to remember. Suddenly a voice echoed from deep inside the cave. Makoa. Everyone froze. The missing boy's voice drifted through the darkness, weak, terrified. "I'm down here." Several villagers gasped. "It's him." "Makoa." "Ma." The voice came again. "I'm down here." One of the boy's relatives immediately ran toward the cave. 3 hunters grabbed him before he could enter. "No. No, but that's my nephew." "Listen to the voice. It's a trap." The terrified man struggled against them. Meanwhile, Gwen listened carefully. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. The voice sounded perfect, yet there was something unnatural beneath it. Something hidden. Then she realized. The voice never paused for breath. Not once. It spoke continuously, smoothly, artificially, like a recording, or an imitation. The hunters heard it too. Their faces turned pale. "Makoa," the voice repeated. Then suddenly, the voice changed. It became older, deeper. Now it sounded like a woman, then a child, then an old man, then dozens of voices at once, all speaking together, all pleading, all begging. The sounds echoed from deep underground, creating a horrifying chorus. The villagers backed away in terror, and then the voices started laughing. Not one laugh, hundreds, hundreds of human voices laughing together. The sound was so unnatural that several people covered their ears. One woman collapsed crying. The laughter continued for nearly a minute, then stopped. The jungle became silent, completely silent. Even the birds had stopped singing, as if every living thing on the island was afraid. Suddenly, something moved deep within the cave. A shadow, huge, far larger than any human. For a brief moment, Gwen thought she saw wings unfolding. Then the darkness swallowed everything again. Nobody entered. Nobody wanted to. The search party returned to the village. But that night, Gwen couldn't stop thinking about the cave, the carvings, the voices, the shadow, the feeling. The feeling that something ancient lived beneath the volcano. Near midnight, she sat alone, reviewing her notes. Kaleo had already gone to bed. The house was silent. Then she heard a knock. 3 soft knocks. Tap, 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 at the window. Gwen looked up. Nothing was there. Then another knock. This time from the back door. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, patient, like someone politely asking to come inside. Gwen felt her pulse racing. She remained motionless. The knocking stopped. Several seconds passed. Then a familiar voice whispered from outside. A voice she had not heard in years. Her mother's voice. Gwen. Her heart nearly stopped. Her mother had died when Gwen was a teenager. Yet the voice sounded perfect. Every detail, every inflection, every breath. The whisper came again. "I found your father." Tears filled Gwen's eyes. The voice sounded so real, so convincing. "I know where he is." The words struck her like a knife. For one horrible moment, she almost stood, almost opened the door. Then she remembered something. Her mother never called her Gwen. Never. Her mother always called her by a childhood nickname. The thing outside didn't know that, because it wasn't her mother. A long silence followed. Then the voice changed. The sweetness vanished. Something angry emerged. Something furious. "Gwen?" The voice deepened. The words no longer sounded human. "You should have opened the door." A chill exploded through her body. Slowly, very slowly, something scratched the wood outside. Screech! Long claw marks appeared across the door. Then another, and another. The entire house trembled. A massive shadow moved past the window. For one brief second, Gwen saw it clearly. A towering humanoid figure, covered in dark gray fur, massive wings folded behind its back, long clawed arms, and those eyes, those horrible red eyes. They were staring directly at her, not from outside the house, but from the other side of the glass, only inches away. Then the creature smiled and vanished into the darkness. Gwen could not move. For several seconds, she remained frozen in her chair, staring at the window. The creature's face had been only inches away. Its red eyes, its twisted smile, its impossible size. Every detail was burned into her memory. Then a powerful gust of wind slammed into the house. Bang! The walls shook. Windows rattled violently. The entire structure groaned. Kaleo rushed from his bedroom. "What happened?" Gwen pointed toward the window. Her voice barely worked. "It was here." The old man's face lost all color. "You saw it clearly?" Gwen nodded. Kaleo sat down heavily, as though he had just heard a death sentence. "Then it's chosen you." The words hung in the air, heavy, terrible. "What do you mean?" The old man stared into the darkness. "The Mothman doesn't reveal itself completely to everyone. It shows itself only to those it wants, those it follows." A cold chill crawled through Gwen's body. Outside, distant thunder rolled across Hawaii Island. The next morning, another person vanished. This time it was one of the hunters who had visited the forbidden cave. His house was empty. His truck remained parked outside. His breakfast sat untouched on the table. The only thing found was a message scratched into the kitchen wall. "It is waking." The entire village descended into panic. Families packed belongings. Some fled toward larger towns. Others locked themselves indoors. Father Nakoa gathered several elders inside the church. Gwen attended the meeting. For the first time, the villagers shared stories that had been hidden for generations. Stories passed secretly from parent to child. Stories no outsider had ever heard. According to the oldest legends, the Mothman was not merely a creature. It was something far older. A guardian, or perhaps a prisoner. Thousands of years ago, long before recorded history, strange lights reportedly descended from the sky near the volcanoes. Afterward, people began disappearing. Entire settlements vanished. Witnesses described a giant winged being with red eyes, a being that fed upon fear. The ancient Hawaiians called it the Watcher above the Fire Mountain. One elder claimed the creature lived beneath the volcano itself, inside a massive hidden cavern. Its nest. The word sent a chill through the room. Nest. A home. A place where it returned. A place where it had lived for centuries, perhaps longer. Then one elder revealed something shocking. "There is another entrance." The room became silent. "What?" The old woman nodded. "My grandfather showed it to me when I was a child. Another tunnel leads beneath the mountain, closer to the creature's home." Father Nakoa looked horrified. No one has entered that tunnel for generations. The woman slowly nodded. Because no one returned. Silence. But Gwen had made her decision. She needed answers. That afternoon she convinced Father Nakoa and 2 hunters to guide her to the second entrance. Reluctantly, they agreed. The journey took several hours. They traveled through dense rainforest, past waterfalls, across fields of ancient volcanic rock. As evening approached, they reached a hidden cliffside covered by vines. Behind the vegetation lay a narrow opening, the second entrance. The air flowing from inside felt unnaturally cold. Even stranger, a low humming sound drifted from deep underground, almost like distant voices. The group activated flashlights and entered. The tunnel descended steeply. The deeper they traveled, the stranger things became. Ancient markings covered the walls, thousands of them. Winged figures, red circles representing eyes, human figures kneeling, human figures screaming, human figures being carried into darkness. Then they found something impossible. A skeleton, human, very old. Beside it lay rusted equipment, a lantern, a pickaxe, and a journal. Father Nakoa carefully opened it. Most pages had rotted away, but one entry remained readable. It was dated 1894. The final entry read, "It is not alone. Dear God, forgive us. There are hundreds." The writing ended abruptly. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. The meaning was horrifying. Hundreds. Hundreds of what? More creatures? The possibility made Gwen's stomach turn. The tunnel continued downward. Eventually they entered a massive cavern, and everyone stopped. The cavern was enormous, larger than a football stadium. Their flashlights could not illuminate the far walls, but something covered the ceiling. Thousands of hanging shapes. Dark cocoons. Hundreds, perhaps thousands. The sight was horrifying. One hunter nearly fainted. "What are those?" Nobody answered, because nobody wanted to know. Then one cocoon moved, slowly. A shape shifted inside. Something alive, something trapped, or something growing. A second cocoon moved, then a third, then dozens. The entire ceiling began trembling. Father Nakoa whispered a prayer. Gwen felt terror unlike anything she had ever known. Suddenly, a loud cracking sound echoed through the cavern. Crack! One cocoon split open. Something fell out. It hit the ground with a wet thud. The flashlights revealed a human body, or what remained of one. The corpse looked decades old, its face frozen in absolute terror. Then another cocoon cracked, and another, and another. The cavern filled with snapping sounds. The hunters began backing away. "Run!" Nobody argued. They turned toward the tunnel. Then the humming returned. Louder, much louder. The sound wasn't coming from the cave. It was coming from above them. The ceiling, the cocoons. Thousands of whispers filled the darkness. Hundreds of human voices speaking together. All saying the same thing. Again. "He is coming. Again. He is coming." The whispers grew louder and louder, until the entire cavern shook. Then every voice stopped simultaneously. Silence. Absolute silence. And from somewhere in the darkness, beyond the reach of their lights, 2 enormous red eyes slowly opened. Not 20 feet away, not 50 feet away, but at the far end of the cavern, meaning the creature was far larger than they had ever imagined. A deep rumbling growl echoed through the underground darkness, and for the first time, the ancient Mothman stepped out of the shadows. Part 5. The King Beneath the Volcano. The creature emerged from the darkness. At first, Gwen's mind refused to understand what she was seeing. The cavern was enormous. Yet the thing stepping from the shadows seemed to consume the space around it. The ancient Mothman was far larger than anyone had imagined, far larger than the legends described, far larger than the figure Gwen had seen outside Kaleo's house. Its wings stretched across much of the cavern. Dark gray fur covered its body. Massive claws scraped against volcanic stone. Its long arms hung almost to the ground, and its red eyes glowed like pools of molten lava. But it was the face that horrified Gwen most. The creature's face looked almost human. Almost. As though something had attempted to create a human being and failed. Terribly. Its mouth stretched too wide. Its skin appeared ancient and cracked. Its expression carried an intelligence far beyond that of any animal. The Mothman wasn't a beast. It was something worse. Something that could think. Something that understood fear. The creature stared directly at Gwen, ignoring everyone else. The cavern became silent. Even the whispers from the cocoons had vanished. Then the Mothman spoke. Not with its mouth. Inside her head. Gwen. The voice exploded through her mind. Deep, ancient, inhuman. She staggered backward, nearly falling. Father Nakoa looked confused. The hunters heard nothing. You have come far. The creature's mouth never moved, yet the words echoed inside her skull. Farther than the others. Gwen's heart pounded. What are you? The question escaped her lips before she realized it. The Mothman tilted its head, almost curiously. Then the answer came. I remember when your world was young. A terrible chill swept through her. I watched your mountains rise from fire. I watched oceans change. I watched civilizations turn to dust. The sheer age implied by those words was unimaginable. Then something moved above. Thousands of cocoons began shaking violently. The entire ceiling trembled. Crack, crack, crack. More cocoons split open. Bodies fell from above. Dozens of them. Some were centuries old. Others looked disturbingly recent. Missing villagers, hunters, tourists, people who had vanished across generations. The floor became covered with corpses. One hunter screamed. Then a corpse suddenly opened its eyes. The hunter froze. The dead body slowly stood. Its movements were unnatural, jerky, wrong. Then another corpse stood, and another. Soon, dozens of dead figures were rising throughout the cavern. Their eyes glowed faint red. The hunters panicked. Run! Everyone sprinted toward the tunnel. The corpses followed, not quickly, slowly, like puppets being pulled by invisible strings. Father Nakoa stumbled. One corpse lunged toward him. Gwen grabbed the priest and pulled him away. The group raced through the tunnel. Behind them came hundreds of footsteps, and something much larger. The Mothman. The tunnel shook violently. Dust fell from above. Stone cracked. The creature was following them, not rushing, not attacking, simply walking, as though it knew escape was impossible, as though it was enjoying the chase. Finally the group burst from the tunnel entrance. Night had fallen. Rain poured from the sky. Lightning flashed across the island. The jungle seemed alive with shadows. Everyone collapsed, gasping for breath. Then the mountain rumbled. At first the sound seemed distant. Then the ground shook. Trees swayed. Birds exploded into the sky. A deep roar emerged from beneath the earth. Father Nakoa's face turned pale. No. Another rumble followed, much stronger. In the distance, Mauna Loa's slopes glowed faint orange. The volcano was awakening. Carvings had shown. HR. Just as the legends had warned, the Mothman's return always preceded disaster. But this time felt different, far worse. Then, Gwen remembered something. The petroglyphs inside the first cave. The final carving. the winged creature, standing above an erupting volcano, not fleeing from it, but controlling it. The realization struck her like lightning. The Mothman wasn't merely predicting disasters, it was causing them. The creature had been manipulating events for centuries, feeding on chaos, feeding on fear. And now it was preparing something enormous, something catastrophic. A bolt of lightning illuminated the mountain. For a brief second, Gwen saw a massive silhouette standing high on the volcanic slope. The Mothman, its wings spread wide, watching the island below, watching thousands of people who had no idea what was coming. Then the creature lifted its head toward the storm clouds and unleashed a scream. The sound was unlike anything human, unlike anything animal. It echoed across Hawaii Island, across forests, across towns, across beaches. Every person who heard it felt the same thing. Pure terror. The scream lasted nearly a minute, and when it finally ended, the volcano answered. A fiery glow erupted from deep within the mountain. The earth shook harder than before. Cracks appeared in the ground. The ancient creature had awakened something, and Gwen realized the horrifying truth. The Mothman was not the island's greatest danger. It was merely the guardian of something far older, far larger, far more terrible. Something sleeping beneath the volcano, and it was beginning to wake. Part 6. The Heart of the Fire Mountain. The ground would not stop shaking. Across Hawaii Island, people rushed from their homes in panic. Dogs barked, car alarms wailed, power lines swayed, and above it all, the volcano glowed brighter with every passing minute. Gwen stood frozen in the rain. The Mothman remained high on the mountainside, its wings stretched against the stormy sky like a living shadow, watching, waiting. Then the creature turned its head and looked directly at her, even from miles away. A voice entered her mind once more. Come. The words struck like a hammer. Come and see the truth. Lightning exploded across the sky. The volcano answered with another violent rumble. Father Nakoa grabbed Gwen's arm. We need to leave the island. But Gwen already knew she couldn't. Too many people were in danger. Too many had already died. Whatever was happening beneath the volcano had to be stopped. She felt that the Mothman wanted her to find it. The thought terrified her. Yet before sunrise, Gwen, Father Nakoa, Kaleo, and the remaining hunters began climbing toward the volcano. The journey was dangerous. Earthquakes continued. Cracks split the ground. Steam escaped from newly formed fissures. By midday they reached the upper slopes. There they found something impossible. A massive opening had appeared in the mountainside. It had not existed before. The entrance looked like a gigantic wound carved into the earth. And deep within, a red glow pulsed like a heartbeat. Boom! The mountain shook. Boom! Another tremor followed. The sound wasn't volcanic. It sounded alive. The group entered. The tunnel descended deep beneath the volcano, far deeper than any cave they had seen before. The air grew hotter. The walls glowed faintly red. Eventually the tunnel opened into a chamber so vast that Gwen could barely comprehend it. It was larger than a city, a gigantic underground world hidden beneath Hawaii Island. Rivers of lava flowed through enormous valleys. Ancient black pillars rose into darkness, and at the center stood a colossal stone structure, a temple, older than any human civilization. Its architecture looked impossible. Nothing like Hawaiian construction, nothing like anything found anywhere on Earth. The ancient temple surrounded a massive pit, and inside that pit, something moved. The group approached cautiously. Then Gwen looked down and screamed. At first her mind couldn't process what she was seeing. An eye. A single eye. A gigantic eye. The eye alone was larger than a house. Slowly, it opened. A deep golden iris emerged from the darkness below. Then another eye opened. And another. And another. The pit wasn't a pit, it was a nest. Something unimaginably huge slept beneath the volcano. A creature so large that only portions of its body could be seen. Its skin resembled black stone. Its breathing caused earthquakes. Its movements shifted the mountain itself. Father Nakoa collapsed to his knees. My God! The ancient legends had been wrong. The Mothman was never the monster. It was the servant, the guardian, the jailer, and the thing beneath the volcano was the prisoner. Suddenly the Mothman appeared, without warning. It landed atop the temple. Its enormous wings sent hot winds across the chamber. The creature stared at the sleeping giant below. Then Gwen heard its voice, for the final time. Before your people, before your history, before your gods, it fell from the stars. Images exploded through Gwen's mind. A burning object crashing into the Pacific Ocean thousands of years ago. Ancient tribes witnessing fire falling from the heavens. A colossal alien entity emerging from the impact crater. Entire settlements destroyed, entire islands devastated. Then came another image. The Mothman. Not one creature, many, thousands, winged beings descending from the night sky. They surrounded the giant, fought it, contained it, and eventually imprisoned it beneath the volcano. The Mothman became its eternal guards, generation after generation, century after century, millennium after millennium, watching, waiting, preventing its escape, until now. The vision ended. Gwen understood everything, the disappearances, the voices, the deaths. The Mothman wasn't hunting for pleasure. It had been gathering fear, gathering energy, gathering sacrifices, strengthening the prison, keeping the ancient titan asleep. But something had changed. The prison was failing. Cracks spread across the temple. Massive stone blocks collapsed. The giant beneath the volcano began rising, slowly, terrifyingly. Its eyes opened fully. The entire chamber shook. Lava erupted from the rivers. The mountains screamed. For the first time in thousands of years, the prisoner was awakening. The Mothman spread its wings and charged. With a deafening roar, it launched itself into the pit. The giant rose to meet it. The collision shook Hawaii Island. A shockwave exploded through the chamber. Stone shattered. Lava erupted. The ceiling began collapsing. Gwen and the others ran. Behind them unfolded a battle between beings older than human history. One trying to escape, the other trying to stop it. The mountain continued collapsing around them. The group barely reached the surface. Moments later, the volcano erupted. A tower of fire blasted into the sky. The island trembled violently. People watched from miles away as an enormous explosion illuminated the horizon. Silence. Hours passed. The eruption gradually weakened. The earthquake stopped. The ground became still, and the storm clouds began to clear. Days later, scientists arrived. Government agencies arrived. Researchers arrived. But they found nothing. No temple. No giant creature. No Mothman. The eruption had buried everything beneath miles of rock. The official explanation blamed volcanic activity. Most people accepted it. But Gwen knew the truth. Months later, she returned to the village. Many homes had been rebuilt. Life had begun returning to normal. One evening she stood alone near the jungle, watching the sunset. The island looked peaceful once again. Then she noticed something high above the clouds, a distant silhouette, huge wings, circling silently, watching the island below, guarding, waiting, and just before it vanished into the evening sky, two faint red eyes opened, then disappeared, leaving Gwen with one final terrifying thought. The ancient Mothman had not died beneath the volcano. It was still out there, still watching, and somewhere beneath Hawaii Island, something ancient was still sleeping. The end. The Ancient Mothman of Hawaii.